Welcome in, everyone, to Freedom from Fear, Just Tap It. This is the podcast for all things emotional freedom techniques because I have the very coolest guests in the whole world. Literally in the whole world. My name is Joan Kaylor, and I am an advanced practitioner with EFT International. I am a licensed counselor in the U.S. and a consultant around the world. I love bringing information to you. I love bringing experts in emotional freedom techniques. And today is no exception. So I am just going to read a little bit of the bio of my guest because she is amazing. So Jules Vandermaat or Vandermaat. Vandermaat is an evidence-based EFT practitioner and trainer. She's also a qualified social worker and therapist with 30 years of combined experience. She specializes in helping people recover from trauma, and her niche is women who have experienced sexual abuse in childhood or adolescence. Jules loves helping people to process trauma in a safe, gentle, fast, and effective ways using emotional freedom techniques, also known as tapping and EFT, so they can live more fully in the present. She is also one of Dr. Peta Stapleton's trainers and enjoys training health professionals and teachers how to use evidence-based EFT with their clients, students, and on themselves to manage their own stress. She works in private practice from her office on the beautiful beachside town she lives in Australia. I hope I say this right. Coffs Harbour?
Yes, that's
Australia. Right. Today in this podcast, we are going to talk to Jules about, yes, you can recover from post-traumatic stress disorder, what PTSD is, and how you can use tapping, working with an advanced practitioner like Jules to recover from PTSD. So welcome in, Jules Vandermaat. It's so nice to meet you.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my honor. All the way from Australia. She has the coolest accent, everyone.
Yeah.
Jules, when did you first learn about emotional freedom techniques?
Actually, it was on Facebook. I've got Nick Ortner to thank for that, and Louise Hay. So the tapping solution kept coming up on my feed. I think it was 17 times. I swiped it away, and then I realized I'm obviously meant to see this. And I watched the interview with Nick Ortner and Louise Hay, and even though it all seemed a little bit too good to be true, watching that interview, because Louise Hay suffered sexual abuse when she was a child. So she was talking about that, and he did some tapping with her, and she was really recommending it as a good tool. And so I thought, if Louise Hay says it's good, it must be good. And I just checked it out for myself. And I was sort of self-taught initially, really. It was a while before I got some formal training, but yeah, that's where I learned about it.
That's where you learned about it. And then where did you go for your formal training? Obviously, it resonated with you and you wanted to know more.
Yeah, so I did level 1 and 2 with a local person who lives just a few hours away. And then I heard about Dr. Peta Stapleton on the World Summit, I think. I was in the shower and I heard this Australian woman's voice, and it was Peta from the Gold Coast, and she was talking about working with children. And I was so excited to know there was an Australian woman who was just down the road, really, who was teaching people evidence-based EFT. And so I got straight into that training, and that really improved my work, I think. I really got a lot out of that training.
How lucky you were to have Peta in your backyard.
I know.
Almost literally.
Yeah, because all the other speakers were American or from the UK, or, there weren't any other Australians, I don't think. So my ears really I mean, I was listening to it because it was about working with children, and I work with children. But when I realised she was Australian, I was extra excited.
I can understand that. So, post-traumatic stress disorder and your niche of helping women to heal from that. Talk about that, Jules, in your practice.
Yeah, so when I first discovered EFT, I was working as a sexual assault counsellor and at the local hospital, actually. And I'd been in that job for a couple of years and finding it pretty difficult, actually, even though I had 25 years of experience as a therapist and I'd done all the required specialist training to be a sexual assault counsellor in my state. I didn't feel like they really had taught me anything about how to manage trauma in the room. And so when I started to learn EFT for myself and practice it with my children and my friends and family members, I thought this is going to be just great for my clients. And so I got some training, and my boss was very good and agreed to let me try it with my clients because she knew that nothing else was working pretty much. And really it was pretty amazing how it just helped people to feel safe enough to do the work they needed to do. And a lot of them had very negative experiences of talk therapy in the past.
Yes.
And felt, re-traumatized by sort of telling their story over and over again to all different health professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, counsellors, therapists, going over and over and over the sad, horrible stories, but with no real relief.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So a lot of them were reluctant to come to the sexual assault service because they knew that it was going to be really focusing on what had happened to them, and nobody ever really wanted to talk about what had happened to them. But the thing with EFT was, we could address that anxiety straight away. We just get tapping as soon as they walk in the door. And most of them, I mean, really were pretty desperate and they would try anything. They trusted me very early on in the piece, most of them, and they're kind of just like, whatever, Jules, like if you say this works, we'll give it a go. And so I just, from the beginning, just started doing it all day, every day. So with everybody that came, because I just hadn't found anything else that worked as well. Yeah.
I so agree with what you're saying. I think it's so important for people to understand that when they have a trauma like PTSD, like sexual abuse, it's really important to find a certified practitioner, hopefully licensed therapist, that knows what to do.
Yeah.
You have to go so slowly.
Yeah.
Make sure that they feel safe. The client feels safe at all times. This is not something to go to with just anyone. With your training with Dr. Peta Stapleton, my training with Craig and Alina Frank, Craig Weiner and Alina Frank, and tapping out of trauma. Yeah. I think it's so important for people to know, one, that there is hope, that they can feel better, that they can process their trauma effectively and completely and not be triggered by anything in the present.
Yeah. And the best thing about it really, I think, for the group of people that I work with, and I also work with lots of men who have, there's lots of men have been sexually abused as children as well, is that there's no need to actually talk about what happened. Do you know what I mean?
Isn't that great with EFT? Yes.
Using the gentle techniques. And I mean, people find it hard to believe. How can that work? How can that be effective? But it is such a relief for people to find that, we can actually do this work without, sometimes just using a movie title. Like I trained with Dr. Laurie Layden and, use a lot of her techniques as well. And just, it's just so nice to see people have that sense of relief. I'm not going to have to go into the story.
Yes.
But that feeling of being hijacked by the trauma that really so many even mental health clinicians and therapists, I don't think, if they haven't experienced it themselves, they actually don't understand why it feels so bad in the body to be retelling the story without doing anything somatic to help, you know? Yeah. And I think, the other thing is that I really love, and that most of my clients really like about EFT, so not only does it work, but it works pretty quickly. The results last. It's a gentle way, and most of them say, I like that I felt in control of the process.
Wow.
And that is so important. When you've been sexually abused as a child or even as an adult, you are definitely not in control. So the healing process, it's just so important that the person feels like, I'm in control of this. I'm choosing the word. She's only going to use my words. Her priority is that I feel comfortable. You know what I mean? So for them to feel in control of the process, and then to have a tool that they can actually take home with them, so that if something happens and they get triggered at the shop, at the supermarket, or by a family member, that they know how to tap, even if it's just, discreet tapping, or just, like a lot of them will just do this, if they're starting to feel a bit activated. But that, like so many of my clients would say, nobody's ever taught me anything that I can really do that really effectively calms them down very quickly.
And for those who are listening in and not watching the video, what Jules just did right now is she just took her fingertips and gently just kind of squeezed them a little bit. And then the setup statement, for those who are unfamiliar with emotional freedom techniques, we tap the side of the hand below the little finger, and then we just use a statement like, even if you do it in your head, you can do it in your head, you can say it out loud, even though I'm feeling this, even though I'm having this reaction, I'm working on accepting myself anyway, or I deeply and completely accept myself. Or you can just tap the side of your hand and think it to yourself. So just to kind of walk people through, if they're listening, what the beginning of the process is. Because EFT is such beautiful. I like the part about sneaking up.
Yeah, definitely.
I like that, because one of my clients I recently worked with, and it was so beautiful. She goes, I put it in a box. I said, fantastic. Where is the box? Then I led her through. It took about 2 sessions, but we went through moving the box from where it was behind this cage, behind these bars, to finally the box ended up in the office where she was, on the table next to her. She was able to open up the box, look inside, and it didn't bother her at all. So it's just phenomenal how emotional freedom techniques works.
Yeah, it really is.
What I'm so appreciative of is finding trained, qualified practitioners like yourself, Jules, that we can bring this message to the world. Because if there's one thing I've heard over and over again that I so agree with, is talk therapy alone is not enough. And especially when it comes to trauma, when it comes to sexual abuse, when it comes to PTSD, I think talk therapy is horrible.
Well, I think it has its place in certain areas with certain client groups. But what I found was astounding was the reason it couldn't work for my group was because most of them couldn't talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so coming in the room and straight away they're feeling activated, they're feeling hijacked by the trauma, and that part of the brain that's responsible for speech, Broca's area, is just, it's offline. So they literally, like I've had clients where we've spent 3 sessions of just doing a lot of tap and breathe.
A lot of resourcing
and just keeping them in the room, and just, like as you said, sneaking up because their body just isn't ready to speak about it.
Yes.
So, I used to feel, how can I do talk therapy with people that really can't even talk for a while? Obviously once you've processed that trauma and they feel okay about thinking about whichever incident you've been working on, then they are okay to talk about it. It's, but that time does come, but it's certainly not in the first few sessions. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
if with talk therapy, if that's all you've got and you're working with people that physiologically can't actually express themselves in that way, their body's talking very loud, but nothing's coming out their mouth, and people feel embarrassed and they feel kind of silly. And, people will say to me, I don't know what's wrong with me. This happened 30 years ago and I've been functioning all right in my life until the last, like sometimes it just, something triggers that trauma capsule to leak. And, but, often they're very high functioning, intelligent people, and they sort of trying to say to me, I'm not normally like this. I don't, they feel silly and they can't explain. And so a lot of that sort of psychoeducation around the way trauma affects the brain and the body is really important to say, this is normal. This is just the trauma. This is what trauma does to people. You're not, you're not silly and you're not dumb, and it's not that you can't express yourself. It's just that, we need to do certain techniques to just help manage that response in the body.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So for those who are listening and watching, there is definitely hope available. You can get help for this. You don't have to talk about it, because obviously you can't talk about it, at least not in the beginning. And for therapists that are listening in, please consider training in emotional freedom techniques and trauma. I'm going to have a link in the description for both YouTube and iTunes of where you can go for training for more of this by experts. And then you too will have the tools necessary to be able to help people with more, especially if you're a young therapist just starting out. Please, please, please study emotional freedom techniques.
Oh, yeah.
Jules, how can people get a hold of you if they're interested in contacting you for help?
Yeah, so probably the best way is just through my website. So it's www.tappingwithjules.com. There's a reach out form they can just fill out there and let me know what they want to know, and we can just start by emails, or usually I like to do a 15-minute free consultation with people over the phone or over online, just to make sure if they want to go ahead with a session that I'm the right person for them, because I think it's really important that people feel very comfortable with who they choose to work with on trauma.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you do distance consulting as well as there in Australia. So anywhere in the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah. Me too, everybody. Me too. So what we're going to do is I'm going to thank everyone for listening and watching today, but stay tuned for part 2 of my interview with Jules. That's the next podcast coming up. We're going to talk about EFT for children. So keep listening in, and thank you to everyone who's already been listening and watching today.